Hello, I'm Liam Carr, and today we are going to learn about glucose and the structure of glucose. First, as by way of a little introduction, glucose is the preferred respiratory substrate, which means it's used in respiration. We can use it, or our mitochondria inside our cells can use it to generate ATP through cell respiration. It's also a hexose sugar, which means it's got 6 carbon atoms within the molecule. And they are arranged in a ring structure. One of them is outside the ring. And we can also describe it as a monosaccharide. What that means is it's a single ring structure. It's not a polysaccharide, it's not a big chain of glucoses. It's a monosaccharide, it's a single ring structure. We'll be focusing mainly on alpha glucose today. There is another form of glucose where one of the OH groups, so that's an oxygen onto a hydrogen, one of those OH groups points up instead of down, and we'll get onto that. We'll mention that a bit later, but it's alpha glucose that we're going to be learning about. That's the one that humans can digest. Quick sip of coffee. Thanks for sticking around. So, just by way of a recap, sometimes I talk about molecules being happy, but what I really mean is that they are stable. That's the first Christmas reference for the day. I hope everyone has a good Christmas. Stable being part of the nativity story. And what we mean by stable in terms of these carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms, we mean that carbon, if it's going to be stable or happy, it's going to have 4 bonds. Oxygen has 2 bonds, so it makes 2 bonds with 2 other things, and hydrogen has 1 bond. So in other words, carbon has a valency, as chemists would say, 4, oxygen 2, and hydrogen 1. And these 3, carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, are the only elements found in glucose and the only elements found in all carbohydrates. So when people talk about carbohydrates, if you're thinking about diet, you'll tend to think about starches, rice, pasta, things like that. But what we really mean by carbohydrates, that should include the sugars too, because they contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And the approximate ratio in any carbohydrate of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen is quite a neat ratio, particularly if we're talking about monosaccharides like glucose. They've got twice as much hydrogen in them as they have oxygen and carbon. So they go C6H12O6. And so if you see something that's got approximately twice as much oxygen and carbon as hydrogen, and it contains carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen only, then you know it is a carbohydrate. And that's what glucose is. And the main focus of this video today is what we're going to do is we are going to look at how glucose is represented. So we know that it's got 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. I'm going to just repeat that at the top of our board here. C6H12O6, because that's a way of checking if we've got our diagrams correct at the end when we've drawn them. So the first way I'm going to represent glucose is I'm going to make it so you can see all of the carbons, hydrogens, oxygens, and all of the bonds. This is the full version, no shortcuts. This is what glucose would look like if you could actually see the molecules. So it would have an oxygen, a carbon, another carbon, another carbon, another carbon, and another carbon. And if we count those carbons, what we've got is we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're not there yet. okay? Because the sixth carbon is up above the ring structure there. All right, there it is. That's carbon 6. So now we've ticked off our 6 carbons, our diagram's complete there. They're not all happy because they don't all have 4 bonds. So let's solve that. 1, 2. So then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds there. These ones are easy to see. 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds there. 4 bonds for that one. 4 bonds for that one. 4 bonds for that one. And this one, everyone always misses this out. Its 4th bond goes below the ring. So 1, 2, 3, 4 on that carbon 5 there. So now we've got 2 ticks because we've got all 6 carbons done and they've all got 4 bonds in them. Next thing we're going to concentrate on is where are the oxygens. So where are our oxygens? So we've got one of them there and it's happy, it's got its 2 bonds. The other oxygens go like this. This main structure here, this hexagonal structure with the 5 carbons and this oxygen in, that's the ring structure of the glucose molecule. And the rest of the oxygens go like this. So you've got an oxygen here below the ring, an oxygen here below the ring, an oxygen here above the ring, the oxygen in alpha glucose here below the ring. So you can see they're both pointing down. And you've got another oxygen here. Let's count our oxygens. We don't number them actually. We number carbons because they're involved in bonding later. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, so we've got 6. Take that off. They're not all happy though. Only this one's happy. So what we're going to do to make them happy is we're going to add hydrogen to them. We're going to make them into OH groups. O bond H, O bond H, O bond H, O bond H, and O bond H. And people often ask me, does it matter which way this goes round? If it points that way or this one points this way, this one's OH and this one's HO. It does to me. When I'm drawing this, I tend to make sure they point in this direction because it helps us when we move on to disaccharides. We'll not be covering that today, we'll do that in class. When we move on to disaccharides, this really does make a difference. And now we'll have a look and we'll see if these are all happy. So this oxygen, sorry, it's got 2 bonds, oxygen 2 bonds, oxygen 2 bonds, oxygen 2 bonds, oxygen 2 bonds. This oxygen's got 2 bonds, so we've finished our oxygens. Okay. Now let's finish off the hydrogens. Hydrogens only need 1 bond, so what you do is you just surround things with hydrogen. If we're talking about fats, this is called like saturating things with hydrogen. So now this hydrogen's got 1 bond, this hydrogen's got 1 bond, there's a hydrogen here, 2 hydrogens here, and let's just check if I've done this right. I think I might have, but just check anyway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They've all got 1 bond and they are all present. C6, H12, O6. If you want to pause the video there, get that in your notes and you can. Now you'll see, you probably had that paused for a bit. You will see that that is a pretty tricky way to draw glucose. So what organic chemists have come up with are new ways of doing this. There are a few rules we can follow, right? And those rules are, we don't have to draw all these. We can just say corners are carbons. We can say O bond H equals OH. And the other thing we can say is that hydrogen may be omitted. It means it may be missed out. Right? And these 3 rules, corners are carbons, OH can be simplified as OH, hydrogen may be omitted. Those 3 things, these are like organic chemistry rules, They allow us to simplify glucose. Right? And that's what we're going to do. Check this out. So we've got corners of carbons. That's an oxygen, so you've got to put it there. These corners are carbons. You don't have to put them in. That CH2OH up there, which looks like that, we can simplify that like this. Check this out. CH2OH. So what we've done is we've written CH2OH. That's the same thing if you're a chemist. CH2OH is actually that. I like that. I don't like that, that was an error. That's fine. I'm going to leave that error in. Apologies for that. That CH2OH points upwards. Yeah. And then what you do is you just put in your OH groups and you can forget about the hydrogens. So you go OH pointing down, OH pointing down, OH pointing up, and OH pointing down. If you want to pause that there, that could be finished, that could be accurate. What you also could do, is what I nearly did here, is you could put those hydrogens in. Just draw it like that. And to be fair, I actually prefer that. I think it looks neater. I think it looks more like the original, and it lets you know where those hydrogens are. But that's like totally fine to miss those hydrogens off. Hydrogens may be emitted, but once you put one on, you've got to put the rest of them on. So that is a nice looking molecule of glucose. So you've got carbon number 1, carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4, carbon number 5, and then this one here on the CH2OH, carbon number 6. You'll see that in textbooks, you'll see that on the internet. You can go even simpler. The OH groups that are the most important, you'll see this on the internet, I won't usually use it. It's very simple, but the OH groups that are most important are the ones involved in bonding to other monosaccharides. So that's that one, and that one. Right? So they're the only ones that really involved in bonding. So the simplest version, like the one that is still correct, but it's very much simplified, is you just miss everything out apart from the ones that are involved in bonding. So you go OH, OH, CH2OH, and that's it. You might see it as simplified as that. Now, I don't particularly think that's so accurate, but you might see it. As I say, the one I would prefer is either the one with all the OH groups in, this one, or the one like we drew before with the hydrogens in. And I'll leave that up there as the structure of glucose. And that is how you draw glucose. Just a quick summary of what we have learned so far. We've learned that glucose is used in respiration. It's got 6 carbons, so it's a hexose sugar, and it's a monosaccharide. We've drawn the alpha form of it today. We reminded ourselves that glucose is C6H12O6, and that happy, stable carbon molecules have, carbon atoms, have 4 bonds, oxygen has 2, and hydrogen has 1. We looked at the most detailed way of drawing glucose there. Very detailed. Everything's there. 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, 6 oxygens. Pretty good diagram. We also learned that you can simplify that, and when you simplify it, it looks a bit like that. And the most important ones in bonding are these OH groups on carbon 1, the OH groups on carbon 4, and also, if you want to have a branched chain polysaccharide, that OH group on carbon 6. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great Christmas. There might be a few of these out over Christmas. I've got to do one on disaccharides. But for now, this is Glucose, and I've been Liam. Thanks for watching.